Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare.
All right. Well, once again, welcome. It's a joy to be with you on a Wednesday evening. And as a reminder, we are going through these precious texts written by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama and Bhikshuni Tibetan children, going through the stages of the path to enlightenment, and been translated and refined and offered in a way that us Westerners can approach it and try to make it truly accessible. So we've already gone through the first two volumes, and we're in the third one now, which is Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Nature. And last couple of weeks, it starts with self. What is the self? Is there a beginning? Is there an end? So really the basic principle of Buddhism is that our suffering arises from misunderstanding ourself. And from that misunderstanding, we start seeing ourselves and others in ways we don't exist. It's discordant from reality. And we start attributing the causes of our happiness and suffering to things that are not the causes of our happiness and suffering. And then we kind of create this cycle of attachment and aversion and the wheel of samsara. So it was starting right there is what is this self? And now we're on to the section of the four Arya truths. So the four truths. Before I dive into that, anyone have any questions or anything come up from last week? Other than why didn't you hit the record button? Okay. I think we're good to go. All right, the four truths. In classical India, many spiritual traditions spoke about the unawakened state of samsara and the awakened state of nirvana. Each tradition having its own description of dukkha. So dukkha is the suffering nature of samsara, the dissatisfaction. So they all had their own description of dukkha, its origins, cessation, and the path leading to sensation. So, once again, just the description of dukkha, one might talk about samsara. And again, samsara is not a place, it's a way we experience things. Nirvana is not a place, it's how we experience ourselves and our experience. So they each have their own description of dukkha, its origin, cessation, and the path leading to cessation. In other words, no more suffering. The path to nirvana, the path to awakening. Samsara means to be reborn with karmically conditioned aggregates. Specifically, it's our 5 aggregates, subject to clinging and appropriated due to afflictions and karma. Well, everybody gets that real easy, right? So these, let's just get with the 5 aggregates a little bit. So again, just the basic principle is if we were uncontaminated, if we were pure, we would know we're a Buddha. Our Buddha nature is already there. There's nothing wrong with us. Our ultimate nature is Buddha nature. We're totally free, liberated, nothing to be fixed. But there's a layer of conditioning, we call it, it's referred to as contamination or tainted. And out of that contamination, we have a misperception of ourselves and our experience. And we really don't have much access to our actual Buddha nature because this egoic mind, the human mind, the conventional mind, is functioning in a way that is obscuring the Buddha nature. And so all Buddhism is just kind of really getting to know who you really are and seeing things as they really exist. Easier said than done. So the contamination, or is, put in terms of these 5 aggregates. Often it's the 5 skandhas, 5 aggregates, 5 skandhas. And it's basically what makes you up as you, seeing yourself as an independent entity. And they are form, right? We have a body, form, feel solid. Okay. And then we have sensations or feelings, right? Some things feel pleasant, some things unpleasant, things neutral. There's a gradation. So this body feels, has these sensations. And then we have perception. Like, how do we perceive these sensations that I like or I don't like, or that are neutral? So, again, some people like Brussels sprouts, some people don't. Are they delicious or not? That'll come from a lot of our own way we perceive and experience things. And next one is called mental factors. So mental factors are these formations that you come into this world with. For example, and we call it your storehouse consciousness of all your imprints and karma and so forth. But, some kids, you notice little babies have their own little personalities. Some are pretty open, some are shy, some are pickier than others. We're coming in already with these formations, these, imprints and attributes. And so that's going to be a part of it. And then consciousness, that's the 5th one. And so all of these aspects together make up what I'm perceiving to be John. John has a body, John has sensations, John has the way that he perceives those sensations. John has all these sort of mental factors, and there's a consciousness that's, part of all this. And so we all have these 5 aspects. Now, if we purify all 5, then we're a Buddha, or we're awakened. But they're impure at this moment. So the sensations, the perceptions, the formations. And so what's being said here is that all the different traditions in India have different ways of describing these and different ways of purifying, eliminating the obscurations that actually prevent you from knowing you're already okay. So based on the way that we perceive and the things we like and don't like, then we get our afflictions, and we create a lot of karma, and we create this wheel of samsara. Liberation is freedom from the bondage of rebirth with polluted aggregates, impelled by afflictions and karma. Polluted means under the influence of ignorance. Liberation comes about by ceasing the ignorance and karma that cause cyclic existence. The mind renouncing dukkha and intent on liberation is a precious mind that needs to be cultivated with care. Yeah, so let's just pause there for a moment. So polluted means under the influence of ignorance. And that's, not ignorance just means we don't see right. We don't perceive properly. We have misperception. And out of that misperception, then we just create more karma, and we get angry, we get resentful, we get, joyful, we get happy, we get bored. All these things arise in dependence upon how I'm attending to whatever I'm attending to and how I attend to it, how it affects me. And but we really think it's the outer event that is causing the feeling, instead of an understanding that it's not the cause. Cause is here, that's a condition that triggers the cause and how I'm perceiving it. And so whether I like Brussels sprouts or not, for example, I'll have some karmic imprints or formations that when coming in contact, those little green things. By the way, I had some really good fresh ones in Durango. Oh, it was great. The salad. Oh, I was pretty sure it was the cause of my happiness, but apparently I was misperceiving as I was having a delicious experience as I, engaged with them. So this opportunity then to start to understand more accurately how I exist and how the world exists, where deliciousness comes from, is always going to help us on this path of recognizing who we are and understanding that, for example, the Brussels sprouts themselves don't contain the deliciousness. It's a combination of things, including my own dispositions and certain imprints that have been conditioned, and somebody else doesn't like them. But, we don't often see things that way. We see something, and then when we talk about attachment to something we like, it's always attachment in a Buddhist definition is going to be we exaggerate the qualities of it. That if it's something we like, we exaggerate the qualities of it. Can't live without it, really need it, have to have it. Or with aversion, we exaggerate the qualities of how terrible that is and how awful it is, and we exaggerate the qualities. Whereas there's a kind of normal, healthy appreciation for something that is a condition for some joy and some deliciousness, and a very clear, healthy quality to avoid some things that are harmful and can create some pain. And so, coming back here to the text, polluted is always going to be a misperception. It's going to be an exaggeration. And under the influence of ignorance, we're going to create karma. We're going to create conditioning. There's going to be that which we like, that which we don't like, and we're going to be a prisoner of this experience. Liberation comes about by ceasing ignorance. In other words, seeing yourself accurately. Wisdom. Wisdom is what frees us. And wisdom is nothing more than truth, right? Being accurate about who we are and our experience. And you also need to eliminate that, with that, the karma that has propelled the conditioning. You think about karma, we can think about it lifetime to lifetime and so forth, but we can also very much think about karma, and do something a lot, you'll tend to do it more, right? How we create habits very karmically. How I talk to my friends about a certain situation, I'll come to have a belief about that, and that'll be the way I see the world. So I'm creating a lot of habits and tendencies all the time. So one aspect of karma is I just keep creating some habits, and then I have a propensity to keep seeing and doing those things, seeing things in a certain way and doing certain things. Right? It becomes compulsive, right? Compulsive thoughts even about how I see people in the world. And so, on that level, I think we can all relate to that, right? We've tried to change a habit and we find out, yeah, that lasted 2 weeks, maybe. We don't have much of a choice. We compulsively go back to the way we once were, in a sense, because the karma is very strong. But we can create new karma, new habits, new tendencies, new imprints. And if we're conscious and able to do that on purpose with a mind that's trained. So the mind renouncing dukkha, they're putting a lot just in this paragraph, aren't they? I'm feeling it. The mind renouncing dukkha and intent on liberation is a precious mind that needs to be cultivated with care. And so that's where we talk about this rare and precious human birth that we have, and this mind that um, is ripened in a particular way, that has access to this path, has an interest in this path, has an interest in freedom, and seeks to be free of suffering. There's very few human minds that are like that in this world. And you happen to have one of them if you're sitting here in a Dharma teaching. So very, very rare. And it needs to be cared for. It can easily slip just back into conventional worldly life, caught up in stresses, worries, and fears, and the whole wheel of samsara. And the worst part of that, you guys want to know the worst part? Or maybe I just shouldn't even talk about it, because it's kind of sad. Man, you're just bold. What's the worst part? The worst part is when we're stuck in that cycle, we become attached to the very cause of our suffering. In other words, we become attached to these things that, in the quest for happiness, actually become the source of our suffering. Attached, again, is an exaggerated view. And so I try to make this wonderful, happy life in samsara. And the very nature of doing that is I'm creating attachments and aversions and the causes of suffering. And, that's devastating. People work their whole life, try to have the right house, the right relationships, the right career, the right things, have the good vacations and all of that. And, not even realize that, what do you stress and worry about? The relationships, the house, the career, doing those things. What do I stress and worry about the most? Those things that I'm most attached to. And why I'm attached to them? Because I think they're the cause of my happiness. And so it's a vicious cycle. Instead of an opportunity to more accurately appreciate the people and things in my life, in this rare and precious life, understand that the causes of my long-term happiness is the way I live my life, is the virtuous and wholesome activities I engage in, which will create the causes for happiness and well-being. And unwholesome, non-virtuous activities are the real cause of my suffering. And underneath that is, because of misperception, I don't see any of that. And so the core root ignorance is that which creates attachment and aversion and the wheel of suffering, seeking happiness in people, places, and things that cannot offer it. As opposed to really appreciating the people, places, and things in your life in ways that are meaningful and accurate, and knowing that you get to experience them, based on how you get to live your life, and the mind that you bring to them. We all can relate to, if we're agitated and having a bad day, our best friend can be annoying. And if I'm happy and joyous, somebody I don't get along with won't even faze me. What am I bringing to these experiences? And then if we live more accurately, understanding our interdependence, that everything about me is because of you and countless others I've never met. There's not a unique, independent anything about John. I mean, that's the thing that really catch a hold to. My body, I did not create. I didn't create anything that's here. And everything about me has only arisen in dependence upon other people and conditions and situations, education, housing, food, clothes, everything. And I only exist in dependence upon all of these conditions, and including some oxygen, which is helpful. And yet I feel very independent. So that's kind of the rub, right? I feel independent. This is my body, except I didn't create it. And it only exists in dependence upon the substance and think about that when I walk sidewalks sometimes. Who created these sidewalks I get to walk on? Everything about my life, everything because of others. So, but we don't generally see ourselves that way. We see ourselves very independently. So that's where the misperceptions and the attachments and the aversions, and we try to build this life in a way that, we think it can provide us with happiness instead of understanding we can use it to cultivate happiness. And it's not coming externally from us, but the external creates the conditions that we can really use this life more accurately without getting attached to things in a way they don't exist and can't do for us what we hope they can or believe they can. It's a pretty vicious cycle. So we become attached to things that we know are even, we can actually consciously know something's really, at some point this will turn into a pep talk. I'm not sure when, could be next week. But it's so sneaky how we can become attached to things that give us a short-term pleasure at the expense of our long-term well-being. And anyone who's ever tried to go on a diet should recognize that. Or anyone who gets obsessed with a diet and in an unhealthy way, right? And even though we know what would be healthy and good for us, and we can even make a list, we don't do those things. We're very habitually conditioned. And there's if this or that happens, I feel good for a little bit, as opposed to recognizing that if I engage in virtue and live a meaningful life and do healthy things, I'll become a healthier, happier person. Pretty simple sounding, but incredibly difficult to do. So the hard part is that in our quest for happiness, we actually become attached to the source of our suffering. We spent a whole half a day on that at the retreat over the weekend. It's really tricky business. So let's get to renunciation. So the precious, first off, yeah. So the mind that is recognizing this, actually, the door has cracked open for liberation, for understanding, for recognizing the freedom that's available and the idea that I don't want to suffer anymore. So that mind is rare and needs to be cultivated with care, with understanding, with patience, gently, slowly, over time. Renunciation does not mean relinquishing happiness. It's the aspiration for liberation, the determination to seek. And seek, let's see, wait a second, I missed that. It's the determination to seek a higher and more enduring happiness than samsara can offer. So this mind can see that, wow, there is something much more than this constant cycle of ups and downs and happiness and then fear and then resentment and then surprise and then comfort and then stress and then worry and then doubt and then hope. Just an incredible cycle that we go through. Just that could all happen one day. And recognize that all of those are based on hoping things go the way I would like them to go for me, so I can feel good. Versus, what about a lasting sense of well-being, that you recognize that everything in your life is an opportunity to grow, to learn, to improve, to engage in the world, to have meaning and purpose in your life, more stable ground from which to engage in the world, and just start with the point that, life's messy. And one of my big problems is I don't think it should be messy for me. And instead of trying to grab onto some way that I can make my life not messy, how about I engage with the messiness so that It doesn't matter whether it's messy or not. It doesn't matter whether, well, you broke a collarbone, right? Yeah, I broke a collarbone. That's pretty messy. Not a fun thing, no. Whew. And, but you had medical care, had an operation, move your shoulder again. Yeah, okay. But, a lot of people break their collarbone. It's devastating. They had all these plans, how things should be. And you're probably not the first person in the world who broke a collarbone, right? No, it happens to probably a couple other people.
My roommate just
Your roommate did too. You guys need to stop hiking together. Yeah. Yeah, not the only. So there's two. So three. Yeah, you broke the collarbone. So here we are thinking, man, look at how poor me. I broke a collarbone. When you look around, there's like 3 other people in the world that have also done it. So you're not alone. At least 3, right? That I know of. And but in truth, not being silly, right? Millions of people break collarbones. Lots of people get cancer. Lots of people have accidents. And it can be like, why me? Well, because you're human and you live in the world. If I understand I'm human, I live in the world. Yeah, I can have accidents. I can need medical care. I can get sick. All those things happen. And yet, can I appreciate that I don't have a broken collarbone right now? You can, because you recently had one. Most of us who haven't broken a collarbone, we're not walking around going, hey, how cool it is. I don't have a broken collarbone. I can do this. Until a problem happens. Right? So that's the Thich Nhat Hanh has that great teaching on the non-toothache. When we have a toothache, it's can be horrific. It can be just terrible. And then, finally we get taken care of, and then there's relief. And then I don't have a toothache. And I'm so grateful to not have a toothache for like 3 or 4 days. And the rest of my life, I'm not grateful to not have a toothache. Unless I get another toothache, and then it comes up. What am I paying attention to in my life, right? And then I just think my life should be a non-toothache or a non-broken collarbone. And then when it happens, even though it happens to millions of others, actually probably it's got to be almost everybody's had a toothache, right? That's got to be pretty normal, I'd imagine. So then these little bumps in the road pop up, and then, now we're suffering. Or maybe I'm worried about breaking the collarbone, or worried about not taking care of my teeth and what pain my fear having to need a root canal. And, now I'm living in fear. So we just get trapped in all of these things, thinking about the world in ways it doesn't really exist. Life's messy. And, maybe we should be pretty happy that right now we don't have a broken collarbone. And if you don't have a toothache, maybe that's pretty good too. And yet I can have everything and then still want something else. My life would be so bad, much better if. Dusty and Jessica, right? You just came back from Kauai. Man, think how happy we could be if we were in Kauai. Nice warm water, hanging out with the seals, looking at all those fish. Now we could be suffering in our own living room because we're not in Kauai. Yeah. Laura and I went there for a honeymoon. Stayed in a little Japanese house, sliding doors. See, I'm building up desire here. I don't know if you're desiring it, but I'm getting ready. And then, we can miss everything that's wonderful right in front of us. The life we already have, the things we've already accomplished, all the things that we've walked through, all the things that we've done in our life, what we appreciate. And yet the mind can go, well, what's next? What else do I need to do? And totally miss, the friends that we have, the environment we get to live in, the things we've done in our lives, and how incredibly rare and precious this opportunity is. A conditioned mind seeking and not content and struggling, even though we have a life beyond most of the population physically. It's going to get better, right? Well, I mean, yeah, if we appreciated not having a toothache, you're already better. Attitude of gratitude, right? But what's being said here is that needs to be cultivated with care, because we can so easily slip back into if only. So, I want to read that last sentence again. So, renunciation does not mean relinquishing happiness. There was the perky part. It's the aspiration for liberation, the determination to seek a higher and more enduring happiness than samsara can offer. And, so many people think of renunciation as, man, just living this tough life and just eating rice and getting a little bit of water and, sleeping on the floor and, I don't need much. But renunciation is really renouncing delusion. It actually creates a lot more happiness. We're a lot happier in renunciation than we are in grasping. So renunciation, I'm renouncing delusional thinking that that my happiness is dependent on, whether this or that happens, or this or I achieve this or that, or all those things that happens. It's recognizing that samsara is never going to provide me that. But what can provide me that is my own mind and body, which is dependent upon others. But the real happiness is always going to come from, how do I engage with others? How do I engage with my work? How do I engage with these mental afflictions and thoughts and worries that arise? And as I start to recognize the opportunity to bring virtue, to bring compassion, to bring loving kindness into myself and others with some wisdom about how we all depend on each other, well, then there's a lot less suffering and a much greater capacity for resilience, well-being, and joy. And so cultivating this mind that's opened the door to that, really nurturing it, caring for it, is really this opportunity for liberation. And so not getting caught up in thinking errors, not getting caught up in distortions, recognizing the value in the life that you have, the people in your life, the things you get to do. Then there can be an intrinsic joy. And what if we cultivated contentment instead of desire? Well, might be happier. As soon as I cultivate desire, I'm dissatisfied, because now I'm desiring something, which is different than a healthy motivation. Yeah, like to plan a trip to Kauai. Not that I'm stuck on that. But I go, yeah, maybe that could work out. But if it doesn't work out, well, I live in a pretty good town, nice place. Just had a meal with a friend. Get to sit and talk to all of you. It's a pretty good life right here, right now. And this offers me the opportunity to learn more about myself and my experience, same as travel would. And everything, whether I'm labeling it difficult or challenging or joyful and pleasurable, are all offering me opportunities to cultivate and develop my heart and mind in ways that are productive and meaningful and more accurate. But we tend to try to make those events make me feel happy. And that becomes the cycle of the prison of samsara, arising from ignorance, attachment, and aversion. Those three motivations together create samsara, create conditioning, create a prison. renunciation, compassion, loving kindness create freedom and well-being. So you have the three that create the prison, the opposites create liberation. Renunciation, another word that I like to use, is wisdom. So that's really, His Holiness went right to the core of this. Right to the core. The first teaching the compassionate Buddha gave was on the four truths: true dukkha, we call often true suffering, true origins, causes of suffering, true cessations, true cessation of suffering, and the true paths, which are the paths to eliminate suffering, to be free, path of liberation. So four truths. These four truths cover our present state, one that is replete with unsatisfactory conditions, dukkha, and their origins, and presents an alternative, nirvana, true cessations, and the path leading to that. So the first two are suffering and causes, and then cessation and the path leading to nirvana, freedom. The Buddha did not create the four truths. He simply described the truth about samsara and its origins, as well as the truth that a path exists to cease those and bring about nirvana. So, what makes a Buddhist teaching Buddhist? There's four seals of Buddhism. So any teachings, we can receive all kinds of teachings. There's lots of Dharma teachings. There's Dharma in all kinds of traditions. Buddhism does not have the patent on freedom, just has a well-developed path that works for many. And so many of you heard of the three marks of existence. So three marks of existence, how the world exists. And the first thing is that things are impermanent. And that's just true. Is there anything that's not permanent? We have to start looking around. And people can easily say, well, chairs aren't permanent, my body's not permanent, there's a lot of things not permanent. But you can get a lot deeper than that. Like, is space permanent? Then you get a little trickier. But these scholars, have really focused on even space and all these things. And, their idea is that everything's impermanent. And so we can check it. We don't have to just take their word for it. But one of the marks of existence is impermanence. Second one is that all contaminated phenomena its very origins have suffering. So that's a fancy way of saying there's nothing in this existence that we're having that can give you the lasting happiness you seek. Right? There's nothing there that our bodies are subject to aging, sickness, and death. Right? We're all going to get sick. Some of us will get broken collarbones. Some of us will have toothaches. We'll get older. The body will decay. I mean, people we know. Sounds like a gloomy talk. Everybody's going to die. We're going to die. Yeah. Oh man. And it's just impermanence, right? And nothing here is going to provide you with this. All contaminated phenomena of samsara contains within it, suffering. And so you just think about it, even the things you like, right? We suffer if it's kept away from us, right? If we don't have it, that which we're attached to, when it's away from us, we're suffering. That which we don't want, when it shows up, then we're suffering. Or there's someone we don't want to be around, or someone we do want to be around, or an activity I want to do but I can't do. And there's just inherent, think about when's the last time you had a full day that was just blissful and wonderful with no concern or worry or anything like that. When's that happen? So you can start to see that, wow, this existence, even with everything we have, you may find that your mind will be concerned about something or fearful of something, even in everything that we have. And then the third one is, trying to think of the way they say it, but it's about not self, the way that we attach to ourself. There's no independent self, basically. So we're not hauling around an independent John. I'm not hauling around independent John from day to day. John is arising moment to moment. John is a stream of consciousness. John's body is changing. And however I try to pin, that's John. John is like this. It will never capture the totality of John. I heard my friend Mike Ruby use that great. It's like trying to nail Jello to the wall. It just doesn't work trying to nail Jello to a wall. He was saying that about trying to get an appointment with somebody. Nailing Jello to a wall. What a great visual. But as soon as you try to pin down who you are, try to identify yourself, what is it that's you? You're not going to find you. So, even your body, right? Your body, cut your arm off. Is your body over there? Is your body here? Which part is it? Is that still you or not you? You can tear your body apart and you won't find you. You can tear your mind apart, you won't find you. You can tear your ego apart, you're not going to find that which is uniquely you. And what you'll find is an arising moment to moment that's very in flux. And but we don't really see it that way. So, but you don't have to be a Buddhist to pin down any of those three things, right? It's just the marks of existence. You are always arising moment to moment, independence upon your body, the conditions, the surroundings, your mental continuum, what you've learned, what your attitudes are. It's very fluid. And there's not an independent self. There's nothing independent about me, as I mentioned. Even my body wasn't independent with me. It had something to do with my parents and their parents and so forth. And even my thoughts and learning, everything's about me is only exists in dependence upon others, the conditions, so forth. So you don't need to be a Buddhist for any of those three to understand impermanence, to understand suffering, to understand no independent self, right? So you don't have to be Buddhist for those. What makes the Buddhist teaching is those three plus the fourth seal. So those are the three seals, three marks of existence, plus one more. And next week, I'd be happy to tell you what that one is. Wouldn't that be a great commercial cutout? And join us for the next episode in which we discover what the fourth seal is. It is that there's a path to be free of this. Basically, the fourth seal is Nirvana is peace, that there is a way out of this. And now you've got a Buddhist teaching. That this human condition that we're experiencing and all of its ways that it exists, there is a way to be free of that. And the Buddha taught a path to be free of that. Now you have a Buddhist teaching. And so that's the launching point here. Going back a page, is this last sentence here. The Buddha did not create the Four Noble Truths. He simply described the truth about samsara and its origins, right? So these marks of existence, as well as the truth that a path exists to cease those and bring about nirvana. There is a path of liberation, the Noble Eightfold Path, we call it. And I think that's where, next week we'll pick up on that
So just a quick clarification question.
Uh-huh.
So the Four Noble Truths, but you called it the Four Seals?
Two different things. Good you asked. So the Four Noble Truths is the first teaching of the Buddha. What I was saying is there's these four seals that are used to check if any teaching is a Buddhist teaching or not. So there's lots of teachings that can be offered around Dharma. The four seals are specifically how you can go.
Those are permanence, not thinking, grant lasting happiness, and not self. Those are three of them.
Three of them, yeah. So the not happiness is more that all conditioned, phenomena is contains suffering or dukkha. But yeah, I like to reframe it in the way we kind of live. There's nothing out there in conditioned existence that can grant you that lasting happiness. Yeah, and then nirvana is peace is the fourth. In other words, there's a path that you can be free of this. This is all unnecessary, in a sense. Yeah, impermanence just simply meaning that there is nothing permanent, right? Nothing is not changing, right? So everything is changing all the time. So for example, even the mountain that you saw driving up here, Mount Sopris, that looks pretty solid, unchangeable, right? But you start looking at it, I mean, just on a single day, you're going to start noticing changes in that mountain. You're even in the shape of the mountain and the lives in the mountains, the trees that are in the mountain, all the things that make up the mountain. It's actually changing all the time, but it looks pretty stable, right? It looks pretty permanent. And, even the chair you're sitting in. So impermanence means that, things change and there's nothing that is going to last forever, right? And yeah. It's good to know. Was there a hand up? All right, got a hand up. All right, go ahead and read it.
So I have a couple of questions, some of them going back a few weeks. I've missed a few classes, but I'm wondering about a really advanced monk, like an older, many thousands of hours of meditation. Can that person get dementia? And why is that funny?
Well, yeah, I'm just, it struck me as, can that person get dementia? Yeah. Well, go ahead with your other one. I'll come back to that.
Okay, well, that's really a big one. And there's some sort of side pieces of that. I just was thinking about it based on some of the teachings a few weeks ago, which I have forgotten, but that generated that question. And the other question has to do with ants. And I know we've had questions about flies and things like that before. And so I've had this ant colony under my floors. And for several years, I've been trying to live in harmony with the ants without eradicating the whole colony.
Mhm.
And I finally couldn't do it anymore. And so I put out a natural thing that will kill them. I haven't been able to stop thinking about, killing these ants, but it was like, it had to be one or the other, right? I was going to have to leave the house or kill the ants. And so I'm wishing that the whole ant colony can come back as a human. I'm wishing them a beneficial rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess that's not specifically a question because I know we've addressed this. You can't give me permission to kill the ants, but given that I've chosen to kill the ants, how do I do that in the best possible, with the best attitude?
Let's go
Those
there.
are my two questions,
Yeah.
John.
Yeah. Yeah, nice light ones. So dementia, I would say that first off, we have, I guess what struck me as a bit funny is, we have, I think as humans, sort of a caricature of a wise old monk who's got a lot of meditation. And, and I think that's a pretty common vision most of us can have. But you can be an elder monk and have meditated a lot, but your meditations may not be even that good of meditations, and you may not even, you can engage in marmot meditation where you actually get easily lose your sharpness. So marmot meditation would be sort of more of an open awareness without a focus in a way that's really not healthy or taught specifically, where people just zone out kind of. And so, there's all these potentials for people to do things. But I think maybe what you're really meaning is, how about a person who is a clear meditator, maybe someone who's achieved shamatha, pure mind, that person's probably not going to have any form of dementia. I mean, their mind is sharp, bright, clear. You kind of like listen to Alan Wallace give a talk. I mean, vivid, bright, sharp, boom, boom, boom. But other people can be also meditators and do other types of meditations that maybe are not very helpful, in which case, like I'm really thinking about sort of that zoning out kind where you lose the sharpness, you lose cognitive ability. And so it's important to, whenever we learn meditation, learn it properly, to learn it from an authentic source and to engage in it, with proper direction. So you can have a sharpness of mind, a clarity of mind. My personal experience just at the monastery when I lived there in India with, elder monks is, they all seem pretty sharp. But that's not a, authoritative answer. It's just my experience being around a bunch of older monks. But there were some who had a stroke and, some different things. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking of a really uncomfortable example after it I began to wonder. I thought about the Dalai Lama and that unfortunate incident where he was playful with sticking his tongue out. And it was just those of us who know and love him can say that was him being playful, but there was a lot of fallout from it and about it being inappropriate. And it made me wonder, is he, losing some boundaries and losing some clarity of what's appropriate and what's inappropriate? And is that a cognitive decline?
No, I wouldn't think that. That's just a normal thing that old Tibetans do. There's nothing unknown about that. As a matter of fact, that incident was actually well received by the child, by the parents. They took photos. Everyone was happy. There was no anything about that. Everything that you're saying about fallout was actually something created many months later, organized by people to present something in a particular way that made people have afflictions around it. So actually what happened in that moment was playful, and everyone was happy and joyful. Parents took photos with him. Everything was great. What got presented later, months later, was a whole different narrative. It's very common old Tibetan things with grandparents, eat my tongue, that's what they do. It's what they have to offer at the end. And it's just a cultural thing. That's all.
I'm really glad to know that because I didn't know that. So thank you for putting that in context.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole thing put on by Chinese government to, put His Holiness in the light in ways
discredit him. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's very reassuring. Okay. So
at the ants, I don't know if I have a good answer for you. So we can maybe talk about that later, more one-on-one.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. All right. Anybody else with some thoughts or questions before we wrap up? Carla.
Last week we were talking about anger, and you described anger as being something like an outside event, or being triggered by an outside event that you feel is threatening your happiness. Did I get that?
Yeah, I
Basically,
said that, yeah, I was saying that there's a common theme with anger in that, and this is more Western psychology, is the common theme with anger is something's thwarting, what we want to have happen. Something's blocking it. And that's why there's sort of physiological response, our blood goes to our hands and fists like we're ready to remove something, that kind of thing. But from the Buddhist perspective is that, the seeds of anger are within us and they get triggered, right? From an outside event, condition or something. But at some point, yeah, why would we get angry? Because, it's generally the theme is it's blocking something that we think should happen or we would like to have happen.
okay, that kind of it covers more. That covers more bases, because I've been kind of testing that out with every time I feel irritated over the last week, and I think that definition is definitely more like I can fit more things into that definition of why I get fall into this anger irritation spectrum than just thinking that it's thwarting my happiness. And then the other related question was anger and aversion in the three poisons seems to be somewhat interchangeable. So is that definition true of any type of aversion?
What happens when we use like labels? So, depending on how they present the three poisons, it might be hatred instead of anger, or aversion. So they use like hatred, anger, aversion, that kind of thing. Or with attachment, they might use the word greed. And so what happens is, just how they translate, these words that don't really exactly connect with English. So just understanding that they're not always interchangeable purely, but in the context of the three poisons, you might have aversion or hatred even be used to describe that same poison. But it's not that the words are so interchangeable. It's much more of they're trying to get. I actually like the word aversion best. That's why you'll hear me say attachment and aversion. But you'll also see it presented as greed and hatred. It's just that we can't really find the words that really grasp the preciseness. I think aversion has a much greater bandwidth. Which goes all the way to anger and hatred. But as you notice, even with being irritable or, not wanting something or being annoyed, would still fit in the aversion category. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the definition that you gave for the anger spectrum doesn't necessarily translate to all averse.
Yeah, you
So-
might be averse to something and not be that angry about it.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
You might be disgusted by something or uncomfortable with something. That's why I like aversion. I think it covers a much broader spectrum. I wouldn't use hatred or anger. That I typically don't use those descriptors.
Right.
Yeah, like we can just be uncomfortable and be averse to something, not angry, right? Or hating it.
And that sense of uncomfortableness doesn't necessarily mean that things aren't going the way I think they should. I guess that's kind of where I'm trying to get, because it was very useful on the anger spectrum to have that little mantra saying, "Oh, I'm somewhere on this anger spectrum," because things aren't going the way I think they should, and then you know,
That fits.
that's so it's such a preposterous belief system that it's kind of easy to just laugh at that point. But I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if I apply that to other forms of aversion, or if other forms of aversion kind of have their own belief systems.
Yeah. So most aversion would be, just how I would like, it's averse to how I'd want it to be in general. Right. But sometimes that how I want to be, um, like getting a broken collarbone. I'm just stuck on that. We could be averse with a wide range. Yeah. Like I don't want a broken collarbone, right? So I'd be very averse to that. And so again, it is, this sense of not being the way I would like it to be, right? And once again, it can get preposterous. Preposterous. Is that right? Preposterous. Wow, that's a great word, isn't it? Preposterous. So thinking I know how things should be, right? Including whether or not I should get a broken collarbone, or, one of the stories all of you know, well, many of you know, is when I busted my knee getting ready to go to Tibet, and things went not the way I thought. But I wound up living in Carbondale and getting married. And so, we don't know at those times with what's happening, how it's happening, and what, as you and I have talked before, what karma is being purified at that moment, and what conditions are being opened up because of an event you don't like. And so I think your formula works.
Okay, yeah, I can kind of see that. Just tweaking it a little bit for each averse reaction. It would, yeah, work pretty well for the entire range of averse reactions.
And the quicker we can get to acceptance,
Yeah.
the freedom we have right there. And if it's averse or it's difficult or it's uncomfortable, the quicker we can get to acceptance and, recognizing, how do I know how I think things should be, or, how I want, things happen, yeah. I'm really glad a lot of things that I really hoped for never happened in hindsight. It's a good thing to remember. I think Dalai Lama, there's a quote of his, something around, we should be grateful, that, many things we hope for never happened, or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, I think you have a good formula there. Put preposterous in there though. Keep that. Okay. Let's go ahead and dedicate the merit that we have cultivated from our time together here. Great deal of merit and wisdom has been cultivated through our efforts and our time energy to improve ourselves and the world we live in. So let us dedicate the merit and wisdom that we have cultivated for the benefit of all sentient beings. May they be free of suffering, and for our own continued spiritual growth. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha.